Welcome to the Jury Thinks What podcast. Part of the Lawyer Minds ecosystem, the Jury Thinks What podcast discusses everything there is to know about trying cases, from preparing the case before the lawsuit is filed, all the way to trial. And most importantly, how to understand what the jury is thinking. During our journey, we'll be talking to some of the brightest trial lawyers from many walks of life. What makes them successful? What makes them different? Do they have secrets to dealing with the jury? Let's find out. Here's your host of the Jury Thinks What podcast, Saul Gruber.
And thank you. Once again, this is the Jury Thinks What, a podcast by trial lawyers for trial lawyers. And I am your host, Saul Gruber from Gruber Trial Consulting. Today's guest is pretty awesome. One of the things we always forget as trial lawyers is that we're telling a story. And we find ourselves just simply regurgitating facts. Well, Jesse Wilson is our guest for this podcast. And Jesse, as we all know, is an acclaimed communication expert, theater person, and he really gets us into thinking, what is our story and what is the winning story? Jesse's best known for his victim to victor theories, which are just mind-blowing. And I know that his book is about to come out on Trial Guides, and his videos are just can't miss to make you think about your story and come up with your story and not just say the same old, same old. I think you're really going to enjoy this, and we really let Jesse go on what he thinks really will be the winning story. And here he is, Jesse Wilson. And here we are again. It's the Jury Thinks What, the podcast for trial lawyers by trial lawyers. And I'm your host, Saul Gruber from Gruber Trial Consulting. Pretty pumped. As you heard in the intro, we have Jesse Wilson, the CEO of Tell the Winning Story. Jesse's fascinating because he's not a lawyer, but he thinks he is. And we're lawyers and we think we're actors. So it actually works out perfectly that we're bringing the two of us together. Jesse, how you doing?
Saul, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great, man. I can't think of a more perfect way to start the Monday morning, man.
So, yeah, right. Although I will be honest, I got a little screwed up with Mountain Time and Eastern Time, but, what am I going to do? So one of the things we were just talking about is, I was a trial lawyer for 30 years, as people know who are subscribers, and tried a lot of nursing home cases. And one of the big issues I always had was you have all these witnesses, you have 20 depositions that you want to kind of look at, right? Because God forbid you cross-examine anybody without a deposition and actually use your brain instead of what's in writing.
Yeah.
And you're so worried about the judge, you think you know the story, but the story we know has absolutely nothing to do with storytelling or what a jury wants to hear. And boom, how do I change that? Like, what do I do to make me more like Mel Orchard and less like Saul Gruber?
You want to be Saul Gruber.
Okay.
And I mean that in every sense of the word, and with nothing but love for Mel. You want to be the best you that you can be. So there's that. But to go back to your first question, you got to know what the right story is.
You really do.
And it's that simple. Am I telling the right story?
And one of the things that I've always found is sometimes you don't know if you're telling the right story until, like in New Jersey, we would have the ability that after every witness, the jurors could ask written questions and we would look at them and determine. And that was when I knew, I'm either on the right track or, oh God, they didn't hear anything I've said.
I mean, I think that's a wonderful thing to empower your jurors. And certainly you've heard it said many times in jury selection, have your jurors write your story for you, but you got to know what your story is first. On the other hand, I mean, it might be a risky move and we'll see it. Maybe it works. I don't know. I've never heard of it where a lawyer were to say, I have no idea what this case is about. I'm putting it on to you guys. I mean, to me, that's rolling the dice. I think you want to control your narrative. You want to know what your case is and what your case is not. But I think it's a really simple, it's certainly so much easier for me to say on this side of the fence to say, well, just know what your story is. Okay, right. Well, what is the story? That would be the second part of that question is, am I telling the right story? Okay, well, what is the right story?
And how do we know that? I mean, how do we approach that?
Well, a good way is to say what is not the right story, what is the wrong story. In my opinion, the right story is the story that's always about your client. And you know that the foundation for my work for Tell the Winning Story, this is what I love to talk about more than any other subject when it comes to communication, presentation, storytelling, human connection, is victim to victor.
Right.
Are we telling the story of the victor, or are we not telling the story of the victor? And I think it's that simple. It's to be or not to be. And if you've made the decision, you, the trial team, have made the decision tell the story of the victor, to me, that makes everything infinitely easier. That's how you frame your case. That's how you line it all up. That's how you sequence it. That's how you get your jurors on board. If you decide to tell the story of the victor, if you decide to not tell the story of the victor, then you have the story of the victim. And
Right.
nobody gives a flying you know what about that story. And yet, how many times do we see that story painfully told again and again and again and again? If I tell the story of my client in pain, if I tell the story of my client who has lost everything, if I
Right.
tell the story whose hopes have been dashed and it's impossible to even think about a future, then give me. Jurors don't care about that.
And that is really what I think most lawyers do.
They
And
do.
and I know I was the worst. I mean, I did that all the time, right?
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
before I handled malpractice cases. It would be, okay, this is a car accident. My guy, the poor person, was sitting at the red light, and woe is me, I got hit from behind, and oh my God, my back hurt, my neck hurt. I went to the hospital, and we would put on all this whole display of this is how bad it hurt. This is what I
Yeah.
couldn't do anymore. That was the mantra of how we learned how to try cases in the 80s and the early 90s.
Sure. Absolutely. And it makes sense. I mean, I get it. It's and because of this word victim
Right.
and because of this word car crash. So let's put those two together. Car crash equals victim. So let's tell the story. But the case is not about a car crash. The case is never about the car crash. The case is about overcoming the car crash. Tell that story. Now you have a completely different story.
And that's so counterintuitive to what we learned as lawyers.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So
It
how
is.
do we go about, we've got a lot of younger lawyers and maybe a little less experienced lawyers. I don't think Mike Cowan listens to my podcast. He may. I know I listen to his. But
Yeah.
how do we get the rest of us who aren't as enlightened as some of these other lawyers to start changing our way of thinking and framing the case?
Absolutely. I mean, I think look, I'm all for smarter, not harder, and the simplest approach is the best approach. And I think you've got to start with taking a really close look at what is the victor story. And for me, it's look no further than the movies. Look no further than the plays. Look no further than what it is that makes a great hero. And why do we perpetually continue to come and watch the same movie? What is it about it? Is it the special effects? Okay, well, maybe. Is it the great sex scene? Well, maybe that's good too, but even that gets old for most people. What is it? It's character. And what is it that makes a great character? So let's define the hero. Let's define the victor. When we compare that to the victor, our understanding of victor, everybody will say the stock answer of the underdog. We all love stories about heroes who never give up. We love underdog. Rocky, $1 Million Baby, the list goes on and on. Rudy, right? It's and this is the question that I always ask witnesses when we're working with. This is actually the very first question to get them educated. Witnesses being the plaintiff or the defendant in a criminal case, get them educated on what is the underdog story. We all love the power of the underdog story. We all love that. So go there, make it simple for yourself, and then ask why. Because we love heroes who never give up.
Right.
No matter what, even if they lose, like Rocky. Rocky loses at the end, but we love him for it because he never gives up. And yet, of course, he gains something else much greater than what he tried to accomplish in the ring. So you've got to look at what it is we love, and then whether you whether you're not feeling it or not, and the feeling is a byproduct of the action and the thought, know this is undisputable, that what works in the courtroom is the exact same thing that works in the movies. It's the exact same thing. It's no different, because jurors are not lawyers. Jurors are not, they don't have the facts and legal theories in their brains. And as Sari says, and it sounds like she's going to be your next guest, let's look to the obvious. They don't want to be there.
Exactly.
How you reach them? How are you going to reach them? So ask yourself, what is it about the hero's journey? If you read Joseph Campbell, what is it about the hero's journey, and what is it about the hero, and what is it about the victor that I love? And so the answer is right there. You don't have to wait more than a New York minute to say, okay, what's a movie that I love? Who's the hero? All heroes want something, and the minute they want something, something gets in the way of what they want. That's called conflict. Those two are inseparable.
Right.
So the distinction that I try to make, that I try to teach and educate, and when I'm invited to work on a case, this is how we want to frame the case, is, or in presenting this story of your client, is your client, your witness, your plaintiff, is not their pain. They are not their pain. They are not their anger. They are not their damages. They are not all the things that have been taken from them. So who are they? So we cross that first box off, and now we go to the second one. So who are they? They are the strength, keyword. They are the strength for trying, keyword, one of my favorite Victor's words, trying. They are the strength for trying to overcome, another great word. They are the strength of trying to overcome what has been taken from them. They are the strength of trying to overcome their pain, their damages, their anger, their depression, their suicidal, all the different, they are the strength of trying to overcome that. And that is a vast difference between saying this is who they are versus who they are not. And if you can show the story, the strength of trying to overcome what has been taken from them, now you're in the victor lane. So,
and that's where, if I just see, that's, and I love listening to you because I get so excited when I listen to you. And no matter where it is, whether it was with the trial consultants, it's exciting. But here's my problem. I'm not the brightest bulb out there, right?
Me either.
I'm a meat and potatoes. Let me get out there. Let me tried a ton of cases. Thank God, a lot of good verdicts and a lot of bad verdicts. I mean, anybody doesn't say the second part isn't doing justice to other lawyers, right? But how do I take that wonderful emotion you just showed me, the wonderful words you just showed me, and kind of take a plaintiff and put a plaintiff in that? That's where I get lost.
Yeah. Well, go back to the drawing board. Go back to, we're here to tell the victor story, and it really does take care of itself. Look, I talk about emotion and emotional connection all the time, and a lot of the times people just, I want to always be clear on what I mean by being, when we talk about emotion, people think that it's about being emotional, right?
Right.
Well, look, Jesse, I didn't go to Juilliard. I'm an actor. I know this stuff comes easy to you, but for me, a meat and potatoes guy, I'll often hear one of my favorites, look, my trial team tells me I need to be more emotional. Shit, my wife tells me I need to be more emotional. I got to be I know the self-help books, and I listen to Brené Brown, and she tells me I need to be more emotional. Everybody in the world tells me, and I'm like waiting for it. I'm like, okay, are you done? Yeah, I'm done. Here's the good news. You don't have to be emotional. What do you mean? This work is not about being emotional. In fact, if I see somebody who's emotional, it's what I always tell them, I want to take my shoe and I want to throw at your freaking head. Because if I see somebody being emotional, I want to, vomit.
Right.
It's not about being emotional. So what is it? It's about being emotionally available. And that is vastly different. When you are available emotionally, you become a surrogate for the right emotion that now becomes our emotion, our being yours. All you are is just a channel for that. You don't have to give it away so cheaply, as we say in the theater. The power of the victor story is so strong, it's almost like the analogy I'll often use, it's like the surfer and the wave, right? You, the storyteller, are the surfer. The wave is the emotion that has come out through the storyteller, through the story that you want to communicate. You, the storyteller, are riding that wave. The power of the victor story is so powerful. Guess what? We're not thinking about Saul up there. I could give a crap about Saul, right? Who am I thinking about? Jurors only think about one thing. What is that? Me and mine. The psychological transfer, when you tell the story of the victor, a person who's trying to overcome what has been taken from them, I'm thinking about me and mine. The lawyer brain says, oh, it's all about me. It's all about me.
Right.
I got to be smart. What am I doing with my hands? Da, 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 da. I'm not saying that staging doesn't matter. I'm not saying that voice doesn't matter. I'm not saying that presence doesn't matter, but your presence becomes more present when you give us the story, the true story of the victor. And now the psychological transfer, there's something within the victor story that cues me to me and mine. I want to be that guy. Or I'm thinking about the person in my life who never gave up. I'm thinking about the person in my life who can barely get out of bed in the morning and yet does, right? That's what I'm thinking about, because
Right.
Universal theme. All you got to do, it's like T-ball. All you got to do is set it up, you connect to it, you tip it, and then I'm there, baby. And then you're riding that wave. It's that powerful. So much easier for me to say, sitting on this side of the fence, not being a lawyer, but I've seen the difference when lawyers trust the victor story versus lawyers who don't. And when you trust the power of the victor story, you are able to take enormous risks with your listener, your audience.
And that is really what I think is so important about what you and some other people are teaching when they talk about that is we have to acknowledge, which is hard for trial lawyers, is it's not about us. In fact, we're irrelevant. Oh, we can only hurt our case. We can't really be helping my client the more I talk about me or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I learned years ago, one of the things I always had to worry about was the juror was always going to say, well, that would never happen to me because I wouldn't let that happen to me. I wouldn't let that happen to my child. I wouldn't let that happen to my parent in a nursing home. So we had to deal with that. And it sounds like what you're doing is you're taking that and putting steroids on it and saying, not only you're saying you're putting them in those shoes and empowering them.
Absolutely. And that, of course, look, the true opening statement is not an opening, it's in voir dire. Have that
Right.
conversation with them. What would you do? Allow them to see the choices. Allow them to see the choice for your victor, put them in that role, and then allow them to see the choices for your villain. You know, it's one thing I know we're so focused on the victor of your client, but you're always telling the victor story. You're also telling the victor story of your villain and their bad choices. Look to the movies. Right. Look no further than the movies. Villains never see themselves as villains, right? So don't rob them of the wonderful opportunity of allowing the rest of the world to see how they want to be seen. Always the victor, never the villain, and let the jurors judge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've always.
One of the things I teach is the villain's victor story, but you're always telling the victor story.
It's funny because we've always said, and I've always believed this, is every case that you have a trial, you have to have some face of evil, right? That's what I've always called it.
Good and there's bad in every story. You got to show.
Without a face of evil, what are you trying? You're not giving anybody the decision to find in your favor.
That's right.
And that's interesting. So let me take a step back for a minute with you, if you don't mind. So now we've got this case. It's a general case pattern that a lot of my subscribers, because I've been a nursing home lawyer for 30 years, you know, we have the daughter put mom in the nursing home. She'll be the first to tell you, and the daughter testifies the worst day of her life was the day she left mom there. She's destroyed.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what we deal with.
I call it the if onlys. We want to hear those if onlys. If only. That's a great thing. Don't be scared of it. I know so many lawyers, she feels guilt. Great. Let me hear it. Keep going.
Yeah, I actually learned that. I was in the nursing home group with Don Keenan. And that was the first thing he said is, before you go to trial, you make sure you bring your client in, because the client's never the person who fell or was abused. And you let them, you make sure they understand their guilt, and you talk to them about it, and you help them embrace it.
That's it. Embrace is the word, man. Embrace is the word. You know, try talking. And I know I'm cutting you off. I know you were giving me an example.
No, not at all.
In a wrongful death case, and you hear this often, try telling I was just in a trial, and we did really. We ended up settling. There was a bifurcated trial. But the mother of these two beautiful boys who were killed, 1 9 and 1 1 year old, had this tremendous amount of guilt that she felt that she couldn't express, and the jurors ended up finding her 0% liability. It was all in the truck driver, and she knew that. And even though a million people told her you have nothing to feel guilty about, she was the driver. But that's the thing. And she's a very religious person. And when we worked together on witness prep, I said, listen, her name is Trista Dean. God himself, my guess is, Trista, that God himself could come down here and say, Trist, you did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Let yourself off the hook. And my guess, Trista, is you would say, being a God-fearing person, God, I've agreed with you on everything, but in this point, I hate to tell you, you're wrong, because my job is to protect my children.
Right.
Period. Dot. Full stop. Try telling a mother of two dead boys, even though she did nothing wrong, to not feel guilty.
No, that guilt's part of the case. That's a huge part. It just is.
It is. And so you absolutely embrace it, because when you embrace it, guess who wants to jump out of that box and say you did nothing wrong?
Right.
Your jurors. But I stopped your flow, and I apologize.
No. This isn't about me. This is all about you, because I'm loving this. I'm taking notes. That's why I keep going with
but
this.
I want to be clear to our listeners, because I know this is like crack. We can just keep going this direction and that direction, but I stopped your flow. Please continue with your case example.
And so we've got that nursing home case, right? And the daughter is feeling horrific guilt. Who am I? And I'm going into that case. Who is the victim? Like, who am I making the victor? It sounds like I'm making the daughter the victor, or what am I doing with the decedent resident who was 93, had Alzheimer's, and developed a horrible bed sore?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. I mean, it seems like, well, the plaintiff is it the daughter? I'm sorry, or is it?
Yeah, it's both. It's the dead person and the daughter.
Yeah, sure. So I would say in that case, I think it's the daughter. It's the daughter, but it's interesting where you don't always go for the obvious. So the plaintiff is. Here's another example of go back to the car crash. The one who was injured. Well, yeah, we want to tell her story, but maybe they're not the most likable person. I mean, you can always find something in there to make us want to champion for that person. But really, in order to champion for that person, maybe that means that we shift the focus on the daughter or the son or the coworker and make them the hero of the story. So in other words, even though that person may not be the plaintiff that we're highlighting that other person so that we ultimately end up caring for the person that we need to care about, right? So, you got to find where the story is. And if I look, right? So, but to go back to your example, I mean, I think absolutely. I don't know anything about the case, but I mean, what I'm hearing you say is the daughter is the woman of the decedent, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So tell me about her story. Who is she?
And that's where we get into the case. To me, that is the case, the daughter. The daughter, a lot of people want to focus on the resident. The resident was 80. She was married, what she was like in high school. I used to do that, but I never thought the jury really would latch on to that. Yeah. Whereas the jury can latch on to the daughter who remembers all the beautiful times with her mom when her mom was able to protect her. And now she's got that guilt that she wasn't able to protect mom. And she relied on the people at the nursing home because they said they could protect her.
So let me ask you this. If this hadn't happened, what would life have looked like?
Life would have, your mom was pleasantly confused and would have continued to be pleasantly confused, but would have given just the idea that her daughter could go there with her kids and talk to mom, even though maybe mom didn't even know who the daughter was. It was giving the daughter some peace.
That time of pleasant confusion is priceless for what was taken from the daughter, right? What she would give to have that time with her mom. So the beautiful thing about storytelling is that we can know more about mom's strength through the daughter than highlighting mom.
Right.
Is that look no further, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to know the strength of the decedent, what is her name?
I mean, this isn't even a real case. This is just our normal case.
Okay.
So her name could be Sherry. You know.
Sherry. Okay. If you want to know the strength of Sherry, look no further than her daughter.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, absolutely. I think you're right to put the camera on her daughter and let us see her strength. And yeah.
I find it fascinating that you're okay with putting the spotlight on somebody that may not even be the plaintiff.
Absolutely. Well, it's called a lay witness, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And your lay witness, I think Rick Friedman said this, your lay witnesses are better than expert witnesses.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So why does that surprise you that I would do that?
I think it's so counterintuitive to what we do as lawyers. It doesn't surprise me that you're doing it, but it's one of the problems. I think those of us who have tried a lot of cases and are active in our trial lawyers associations tend to be with other people who try a lot of cases and are active in their trial lawyer organizations. So we'll be out to dinner with people, and these are the conversations we have, right?
Yeah.
What we keep forgetting is 99% of the trial lawyers out there are not in those conversations, and they're not realizing, oh yeah, if we do this, that may work, or this may work.
Yeah. Well, also let's not forget, entertainment, I know, is a scary word. Performance is a scary word in the courtroom. The negative connotation to that word is inauthentic, dog and pony show.
Yep.
Even the word story, a lot of people bristle at. But the fact is, jurors do want to be entertained. They do want a good story, right?
If you told me I was going to sit in a movie theater for a week instead of working, instead of being at the pool, I mean, I'm in Miami, instead of playing golf, and I was going to be there from 8 a.m. to 5 every day, looking at a screen or being in another room waiting to look at the screen, and nothing entertaining happened, and I can't use my phone, and I can't call, I would lose my mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And the story, if we go back to the storyteller, you, the lawyer, another thing that, if I were to, let me ask you this. Here's a pop quiz. What emotion do you think is the scariest emotion to express in the courtroom for both you, the lawyer, and your witness?
I'm cheating because it has to be vulnerability. It can't be anything but that.
Vulnerability absolutely is an action. Okay. But what emotion behind vulnerability? So vulnerability, you can be vulnerable and express a myriad of different emotions, but I don't know, and maybe I'm not up for the debate, but for me, I don't know if vulnerability is necessarily an emotion versus an action. What emotion do you think is the scariest? And I hear this across the board, across the country, in every storytelling directing workshop that I work with lawyers, as well as when I work with witnesses. What do you think, Saul? What would you say? Emotion, feeling.
Fear or honesty?
Fear, honesty, fear. So I'm going to say no. Honesty is certainly the goal. Honesty, authenticity, credibility. That's of course always a goal, and credibility is the most important thing in the courtroom. But fear is an easy emotion. In fact, fear is the greatest go-to emotion for both the lawyer and the witness, and it's the victim trap. The emotion that is the scariest emotion to feel, to express, to commit to, 3 words: joy. Joy. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, I cannot wait for you to meet my client. I cannot wait for you to hear the story of what you're going to learn about how she overcome how she tried to overcome what was taken from her. The last thing in the world we want is sympathy, right? We're not here for sympathy. We're here for justice. And she is a kick-ass grandma, and she's not giving up. Look at the emotion I'm bringing to that. There's a difference between, what you might hear. If you're telling a story of joy, here's the thing. You got to be able to commit to the joy.
Right.
What's the difference between a great production of Hamlet and a shit production of Hamlet? Words don't change. It's what you bring to the performance. It's how you make the words come to life. And so if I'm telling a story of joy, you've got to commit to the joy. Sometimes I'll hear, and it's not far enough. You got to go the distance. The last thing in the world we want is sympathy. The woman, my client, is she's a fighter, and she doesn't give up. And I can't wait for you to meet her. Now, I'm not suggesting that you've got to be Phantom of the freaking Opera up here and be Mr. because that's gross. Now all of a sudden we're back to being emotional, and we don't care about that.
Right.
On the other hand, joy is so powerful. A little goes a long way. If you can connect to the feeling of joy, which telling the story of your victor should be a joyful act, and if it is not, ask yourself why. Why am I not feeling the joy? Why am I not feeling the joy of telling the story about my victor? Why am I not feeling the joy of telling the story about my villain, right? And
right.
their attempt at trying to make the rest of the world see their victor story. Bottom line is storytelling. The story that you communicate and you share with your jurors is a joyful act. So don't rob yourself of the joy, and don't rob me, the listener, of the joy. And when it comes to the witness, this is why witness preparation, we were talking about this earlier before we went live, before you do a depo is so important, because you want to cast your witness in the right role. More often than not, they will painfully cast themselves in the wrong role, the role that they think the juror should see them as the victim, not as the victor. And so one of the first questions I ask, I'll usually one or the other. I'll ask the movie question first. What's one of your favorite movies about a character that never gives up? Or I'll ask, what is it that gives you joy? More often than not, I'll ask, what is it that gives you joy? Share something that gives you joy in your life. So Saul, I'm going to put you in the witness's role. Put yourself maybe it's a current case you're working on, but make one up, or somebody that were current case or future client, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we have a case getting ready to go to trial in Kentucky, which is the wrongful death of a woman who they failed to diagnose the cancer correctly, and yeah.
All right, so let's pretend that you're her. I'm to use TLC psychodrama language. We're gonna role reverse, okay? So be her for a second. What's her name? What's your name?
Her name is Sally, and I am Sally.
Yeah. So let's just riff for a little bit. Surplus reality is fine. We're just playing here. Let's pretend that you're Sally. Sally, give me something right now in your life that gives you joy, and I'll share something. What's that?
My two children.
Your two children.
My two children are everything. One is 8, the other is 6. They're both girls, and they look to me for everything, and I look to them for everything.
And tell me about some. I'm sure that you could probably come up with a million examples, Sally, but give me something that makes you laugh that they do. Is there something that you can
Yeah, they like to go in my closet and pull out my dresses and pick the skimpiest dresses that I own and put them on and make pretend they're me going out with daddy. They love to do it. And
now you just smile. Now I get to hold you accountable, right? Sally, what if I were to tell you that the most important thing, the single most important thing in your testimony before your deposition and for trial, and Sally, in my mind, they're one and the same. We want to prepare as if we're going to trial, because that's going to make your deposition even more powerful. What if I were to tell you, Sally, the single most important thing when you take the stand in front of your jurors is what you just gave me, joy? Would that shock you, Sally? Would that surprise you?
Yeah, that would. Because I think I'm supposed to make them cry, not smile.
Exactly. Sally, it's the complete opposite.
Wow.
And so the message to the lawyer is this. It's in my book. It's actually like right there in the whole chapter on witness on the victim to victor. And it's right there. And I put it in big, bold letters. When you invest, or when you deposit joy, you can withdraw the pain. When you deposit joy, you can withdraw the pain. So when you deposit the joy for your jurors, for your listeners, when they see your client talking about the things that make them laugh, the things that make them smile. And here's one of my other favorite, I think I might have said this, or one of my favorite other Victor words, despite, ding, 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 despite what has been taken from them, you are now depositing the joy. So now you can withdraw the pain. Now you have permission to talk about their damages. Most people have got the cart before the horse.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you about what Sally has lost. Let me tell you about what she can't do. Can't. Don't ever, ever have your client say the words can't out of their mouth. Say, I'm trying to. It's been hard for me to. It's difficult for me to. But don't ever have them say can't. Right?
You know, Jesse, I have to interrupt you because I know everybody who's listening to this is going to say the same thing. Wait a minute. I know who Jesse is because I've seen him speak at my state. I'm on Facebook. He was nice enough to let me join his Facebook group, which I love, by the way.
Good.
I'm in it. I love it.
Fun group.
Just brilliant people. You know, they're just brilliant people who the first time I read posts in your Facebook group, I'm like, boy, that's stupid. That's my first instinct, right? Because I'm a typical lawyer. And then I read it again. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Then I read it a third time. I'm like, oh my God, that's brilliant. So I go from stupid to brilliant. What's that?
What was stupid?
Just, you know, I'll look at what people say.
Okay.
Right? You know, like a lot of times you on the Facebook group, you will put out, you know, where are you today and where are you underneath where you are today or something along those lines.
The story beneath the surface story.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll read different responses. And it's always Andy Young's response. And I read his response and I know him pretty well. I'm like, come on, Andy, what are you talking about? Then I read it a second time. I'm like, oh, I swear to you, I read it a third time. I'm like, wow, Andy's really smart.
Hang in there, buddy. Good for you. Despite Andy's ridiculousness, you hung in there.
I'm going to have to take a part of this and send it to him later on today. So I've read all of your stuff, and not just in anticipation of today. I wanted you on my podcast because I read all your stuff. But I looked for a book. I looked on Trial Guides. All I had was your and Mel's video of the victim to victor. So what book are you talking about?
Well, I was going to go back to your question. There's lawyers out there thinking, and I think I cut you off, so I was going to want you to fill in the blank. But the book, shameless plug, super excited about it. This is coming out hopefully, I think pre-sales are the end of or mid-February, and then book in print, like ready to be like, you know, in your hand, either the end of February, the beginning of March. This is Witness Preparation, How to Tell the Winning Story. That's the name of it. Says exactly what it is. And the foundation for the book is what we're talking about. It's victim to victor. And in the book, I have, there are 8 chapters. And in the majority of those chapters, I interview and these are case studies of people of some of the greatest lawyers across the country that I've worked with. So,
and will the book have like explanations and, oh, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for that. That's absolutely outstanding.
Yeah. This isn't Jesse laying out in the lounge going, I remember because I haven't been doing this stuff for very long. No, this is not just case studies, but how to put it in action. And one of the biggest challenges for me, as with anybody with a theater background, is to make the work, these directing skills, storytelling skills, as accessible to you so that you can apply them to your case yesterday. And that was the whole intent of the book. I didn't want it just to be a fun read, although I believe it's a fun read. It's one of the coolest things I've ever had to,
I think we're in a really interesting time for trial lawyers. And I don't know if the pandemic is part of it, but I think it started 15 years before the pandemic. And Trial Guides is the perfect example. There are just so many phenomenal, outstanding, and entertaining books about the types of things we can do as lawyers.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I think it's a little under a decade that I officially made the break into working as a jury trial consultant. And I say this all the time, and I'm try to be as transparent as possible. It's always, Jesus, what can I get away with? What can I not get away with?
Right.
Because it's because it's the target is the human heart.
Yes.
And it's as wide and vast as the ocean. And so if your goal is to tell the human story or the right story, there are so many different avenues to explore uncharted terrains and undiscovered country that you've got these amazing people like, well, you've got Sari coming up and Friedman, Wall, of course, and Keith Mitnick, and it's just I geek out on this. Just so the fact that I'm even a part of the Trial Guides Club. I mean, you hear the word honor all the time, but it's a freaking honor, man.
Yeah, I agree with you. I geek out. I geek out every day.
How can you not? How can you not? It's such great shit out there.
You know, and what I do personally is, because you don't want to work too hard. I'm not practicing anymore. I don't go a day without reading something, whether it's a chapter in Mark Mandel's book, whether it's a chapter in Saul Sari's book I've read 4 times. I mean, Keith's book, his new book. I feel like a chapter means I take something different every time I read that chapter.
Great. That's great, man. That's great. Well, there are the mechanics and things that to do and not do. And I mean, there's whatever it is your focus is, you're going to find it in the Trial Guides universe. But I think, look, we go to the gym, right? We go to the gym because our muscles atrophy.
Right.
And I believe we do this work. You do the podcast that you're doing and the CLEs and the books and all that. All that stuff is to maintain our emotional state so that our emotional muscles don't atrophy, and they do. You know how you know as just as well as I do that there is a fine line between intellectualization, or whatever the hell the word is, living in your head versus the emotional connection, and then getting yourself to a place where it's no longer about you. We hear that all the time. It begins with a thought, but it's not an intellectual endeavor. And great communication and great storytelling is a physical experience. You got to constantly try to find a way of awakening your system. And so there's no limit to what's out there. So the fact that you're doing that for you is just a net positive for
curious. I'm curious what you think, because I'm pushing to all my clients, and I did this the last maybe 5 or 6 years of practice of doing as many focus groups as I can.
Great.
It doesn't have to be this big production for $30,000. It could be just 7 people you get on from the street.
Grab a bunch of people at freaking Starbucks. Look, man, my background's in theater. So, for me, I still have the same mindset. Guerrilla focus groups should be like your world. Guerrilla focus groups mean you grab, if they've got a heartbeat and they're alive,
right,
grab it.
And then just tell what you think the story is.
Tell what you think the story is,
and see what they say.
Honor the word focus. What is it you're focusing on? Maybe the focus group is look, I want to know about the strengths and weaknesses, and so it's a mini focus group on should I dump the case or blah 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 blah.
Right.
Or look, I want to just polish my storytelling skills, or I want to do a mock direct, or in the book we talk about the focus group as the rehearsal place. And I'm a big believer in this, man, and it's underutilized. If you have a client, and let's just assume that they're all in pain, let's just assume that every client that you work with, because they're so entrenched within the victim role, some more than others. If you're dealing with sexual abuse, and in the book I talk about a case that I worked on with Michelle Burroughs, and this was a prison case, and these women, 10 women, were systematically raped and abused by a prison staff, and we got to tell their stories. And so there's an example of a severe trauma. Of course, if it's that severe, you want to think about working with a licensed psychotherapist, right, or on staff, just like I do in prison, or working in recovery. But the point is that you want to be able to have an environment where you literally practice listening. You practice having a conversation. It's not about, well, I really want to know your feedback, ladies and gentlemen. No, you want to put your client on the stand in this place where they feel comfortable. Let them have a dialogue with their listeners. Let them role reverse with the listeners. In fact, literally let let the listener, maybe it's you, maybe it's the people in the group, become them and have your client watch them through them so that you're diffusing. It's easy to say, well, this is public speaking, but what you're doing is you're creating a healing place where this may be the very first time that they're actually able to tell their story.
Right.
So use that opportunity, and you can do it for 10 freaking bucks, man.
I agree. Yeah.
We're in a library and just get bodies in a room. All of that is helpful. I look back and there's been plenty of times where I wish I would have created that place. To me, that's the counterpart when we're talking about getting ready for a deposition. Yeah, okay, there's a depo prep and all the do's and don'ts and the checklist that you go through and the camera and all that stuff. That's great. But the counterpart to that should be, okay, look, we've created a safe place with us. Don't get cocky though. Just because you've created that safe environment for you doesn't mean all of a sudden that bubble is going to pop when you've got the big bad defense attorney just asking them amicable questions, not interrogating them. It's not a cross-examination. So you want to be able to create that rehearsal space and use it and then move into the deposition. It's like night and day. So,
interesting. One of the other things that I've told everybody is I don't know one person who doesn't have a smartphone, right? We all have them.
Right.
And every one of them comes with a button that you could hit and you can videotape with whatever's in front or behind, depending on how you hold it.
Yeah.
I tell everybody, videotape a direct, just videotape it and let the client see it later.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why we're not videotaping every time we start thinking about an opening and start practicing it a little.
I agree. And look no further than Zoom. So you got a recording, you can play it back for them.
Yeah.
Right? So it's right there in front of your face. I mean, it's everybody's like, oh, Zoom, I can't wait to get back in person. Well, sure, so can I. But Zoom is a net positive for prep. It really is, because they're looking at themselves. So
I've prepped probably 20 experts in the last 8 months.
Great.
And I'm so happy I'm not on the phone. I'm so happy I'm looking at them. I'm so happy that I see them with their head down like this. And I'm like, what are you doing? Come back up here. I need to see you up here. The last thing I want is the jury to see this the whole time. Right. I think it really makes a difference. I know that, did you ever work with Carl Bettinger when he was still practicing?
God, I would have loved to, because his book is right on my shelf, 12 Heroes, One Voice. I mean, I would love to work with that book. Like, talk about it.
Well,
I have not worked with him, but I would have loved to.
So Carl was a nursing home lawyer. The cases he talks about in the book were both nursing home cases.
Yeah.
And so I knew him very well. And I would watch him. He was my instructor for the AAJ Nursing Home College 25 years ago. So when he was doing what we just did, he did with us, the role reversal. He brought all of the psychodrama. And it was unbelievable to watch him go from Carl, who you would have dinner with, to Carl, who would do his opening statement.
Yeah.
And that's what I think I want lawyers to start understanding.
I love that. Say more about that. I'm sorry. So he did what to what now? What was the transition?
So we would go out to dinner and we would just talk about things, and we would talk about business. We talk about life. Yeah. And he was Carl was a doctor, but he was a very confident, positive person.
Yeah.
When he went into opening statements, you watched him transition from the confident Carl, who we knew and respected, to a very vulnerable person who would just like be in the courtroom, but not be in the courtroom.
Yeah.
He didn't take the courtroom over, but you couldn't take your eyes off of him.
Yeah. I love that. Thanks for clarifying that. I love that. And it's, there's a divine paradox here, which we're talking about. I know the focus was victim to victor, but we're also talking about how do we present the victim to victor story? You're the storyteller. So what do you got to do to get yourself on board? And to me, the divine paradox in storytelling, when it comes to making the choice to tell the victor story, is telling the right story of your client has nothing to do with you. But, and here's a paradox, it has everything to do with you to make it all about them. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll say it again. The right story of your client has nothing to do with you, but it has everything to do with you to make it all about them. So yes, you're highlighting them, but what do you got to do to get yourself on board? My buddy Eric Penn, we had a program we created. It's called The Most Important Juror. And he's always, Eric Penn's from Texas, brilliant lawyer. He's always like, well, who's the most important juror here? How does he feel about them? Who's the most important juror? It's you. And if you feel it, if you see it, we see it. If you feel it, we feel it. And a little goes a long way. It really does. And the theater and the courtroom is one and the same. You don't have to do much. You don't have to give it away so cheaply. If you feel just a little bit of joy, that little bit of joy can fill up the entire room. If you believe and you love and you're inspired by the fight in your client, you don't have to put it on a big neon sign and shove it under my nose and spoon feed me. You feel it, and that allows you, to take enormous risks with your listener. I teach improvisation. I do it online. I do it in person. Improvisation is always a part of the workshops. And among so many takeaways and listening and connecting, and I would say that the most important part, in my opinion, of improvisation is learning how to take enormous risks with your listeners. And we risk so that we can trust. We trust so that we can risk. The courtroom, as well as the theater, the theater is a safe place to be dangerous. I learned that years ago. Hopefully, if you've got a really good teacher, you're in a place where you can take those risks. The theater is a safe place to be dangerous. But the courtroom, as well as life, in my opinion, is a dangerous place to be safe. And when you trust what the right story is, and when you trust what the right story is not, it's amazing what you can do, and you can become Carl Bettinger. And just have that kind of presence and authority because you trust so powerfully in what it is that we're going to trust. There's no greater superpower than that. That's
wow. So that's phenomenal. If our listeners were to say, hey, I have this huge case, I know Jesse does this kind of work on cases, how would they go about getting a hold of you so they can start trusting the system as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, you can go onto my website, tellthewinningstory.com. You can shoot me an email, jesse@tellthewinningstory.com. There's no limit to what you can do with us.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and also, Saul, if you're okay with it, I'd love to invite everybody to jump into to our private storytelling Facebook group for attorneys.
It's great.
Yeah, this is the subset of Tell the Winning Story. It's Write, Tell, Live in Story. Write, TELL, Tell, Live in Story. Jump on in. It's 100% free. And, you could be like Saul. At first you think we're full of shit, but if you stick around a little bit, hey.
I'm telling you, the third time is the charm. When you read it, you're like, I got it. Now I get it. And you know what? That's what everybody should do. Well, Jess, I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
And I've got to get you on again, maybe next season, where we can talk about The Mask.
Absolutely.
Because that just always freaks me out, but I love watching what everybody does.
Yeah. Well, The Mask is scary. And if you look at The Mask, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, but it's the counterpart to the victim to victor thing.
Yes.
The Mask is scary. So is the face of the victim, but that's not who they are.
Right.
That's not who they are.
Let's leave it with everybody on that, so they want to know more. We're going to leave them wanting more.
That's it.
Jesse, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on, and I will see you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Wow. That was something. Jesse Wilson, our guest this week, was just phenomenal in getting us and me, if you're watching it and not listening, to talk about joy and how depositing joy allows you to withdraw pain. Just information I never would have thought of, and a little bit of mind-blowing, to be honest. Again, this is Saul Gruber from Gruber Trial Consulting, your host for The Jury Thinks What? A podcast by trial lawyers for trial lawyers. And listen to this the second time. I think you're really going to be blown away by what Jesse tells us. And don't forget to go to Facebook and join Jesse's free Facebook group. It really is amazing. I'm on it, and I learned so many things. And look for his book coming out on Trial Guides over the next couple of months. Again, this is Saul Gruber from The Jury Thinks What?
That concludes another episode of the Jury Thinks What podcast, part of the Lawyer Minds ecosystem. Thank you for listening, and we truly hope it was worth your time. Please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Explore the other content that Lawyer Minds has to offer, and engage with us on social media. Your feedback and ideas are always welcomed. See you next time.